Hello, my name is Stephen Porter and welcome to this London Advance from podcast for CRC's Good Relations Week. Today we're joined by a Northern Ireland comedy legend to talk all things culture. He's the star of Giving My Head Peace is Da, and he's also presenter at BBC One's comedy panel show The Blame Game. Please welcome Tim McGarry.
Tim, I'm here. Thank you for joining me in this podcast for Good Relations Week. This year's theme is about better days ahead, so we're going to chat about a bit about the past and then how you got into comedy and all, and how culture can bring people together. So what was your life like growing up?
Well, first of all, Stephen, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. It's nice to be talking about better days ahead when you're my age and you're flipping 58 for flip's sake. So I'm feeling very old these days. But I'm a North Belfast man. I was born in Fort William Park. In fact, I'm a very boring man. I've moved about 4 times in a radius of 500 yards of where I was born. And I was born in 1964. And my dad was a surgeon in the Manor Hospital in Belfast. So I came from a sort of middle class, sort of Catholic nationalist background, very moderate sort of Catholic nationalist. But I came from a nice area of North Belfast and I had a very idyllic childhood. The troubles impinged as they always did in anybody's lives. But I can't complain about my childhood or anything like that. I had a very, very nice time, very pleasant time.
So how did you end up getting into comedy then?
Well, that was the fault of 2 fellas who I met at university, Damon Quinn and Michael McDowell. And I met them. I went to St Malachy's College in North Belfast and did A-levels in Latin, Spanish and history, and ended up doing law at Queen's University, where I met Damon Quinn and Michael McDowell. And Damon actually is from West Belfast, and he used to write plays and sketches when he was at school and wrote shows for his colleagues at school. And Michael McDowell, he's from Jordanstown, I think at Belfast High he went to. And we kind of met up at university, headed off. Damon wrote plays, actually wrote his comedy plays and put them on the group theatre and got us to muck in and help him out and stuff. And it kind of took off from there. And I've been stuck with him ever bloody since, since that was 1982. That's nearly 40 years ago, Stephen, I'm stuck with these guys. But, it kind of took off from there. We spent a lot of time being amateurs. We did shows for charity, we did shows for Amnesty International, we did shows for Oxfam and for the Third World and things in the early days, the early 80s and stuff. And then it gradually got better and better and the audiences got bigger and bigger, and we kind of decided, well, let's see how this goes. And we did we had a very successful radio show in 1991, which won a Sony Award for the best radio comedy in the UK. And we sat in our arses thinking somebody will ring us up and make us superstars, but it doesn't happen like that. You got to go out and find the work yourself. So in 1996 we finally bit the bullet and went full-time ourselves to see how it would go, and here we are 26 years later, still bizarrely making a living out of it, so I cannot complain.
What was your experience like the culture growing up, especially around like praise and stuff like that there, and do you think it has improved in the period since?
Well, absolutely has massively improved. I mean, as I say, I would come from a sort of soft nationalist background, but there used to be a lot of hassle even in North Belfast, near where I was. Not, they weren't marching past our house, but there was the Tour of the North. It was a famous parade which caused an awful lot of hassle and used to come down. I think it was Dunkirk Gardens. It used to come down, the Cliftonville Road near the New Lodge and down Dunkirk Gardens. And for when I was young, certainly it caused several problems. I think what's happening. I mean, I'm a child of the Troubles, Stephen. I'm one of those ones who was young enough to remember most of it. And we did a documentary there, which we're very, very proud of. What is a series called Pop Goes Northern Ireland, which is an archive show about the history of the Troubles, and it takes a year of the Troubles and does it in half an hour with the archive footage and just music of the time. And the Troubles lasted far too long and created an awful lot of bitterness. But I think we're vastly improving things at the moment. I think we genuinely are. I mean, I have a good friend now, David Hume of the Orange Order, who I met doing a documentary in 2013 when he was doing a documentary about Ulster Scots. But up until that time, genuinely, I didn't know any Orange men. I didn't have them as friends. In fact, I didn't know any Protestants until I left school in St Malachy's in 1982, after at the age of 18. When I went to Queen's, I genuinely didn't meet any, didn't know any. And that's not particularly my fault. I mean, I'm bore people and bore the arse off people about integrated education. I'm a passionate advocate of integrated education, and I think we still now, as we saw over the summertime during all the stuff about the Fela and the stuff about the bonfires, both on the 11th and the one in Derry, that we don't understand each other and don't understand each other's culture. But once you sit down with the likes of David Hume, I mean, when I was young, I would have seen orange bands as threatening, genuinely threatening, and I don't see that anymore. I see that as I see them now for what they are. They're people behind them, and it's a proper culture and people enjoying themselves. Whereas in the Troubles, everything was political. Every single thing was political, and I think the depoliticization of bands, and I think the work that, for instance, that the London Derry Bands Forum is doing is fantastic. The stuff, I mean, I like it was the Fla, wasn't it? Invited you for the Fla, the Derry Fla, a few years ago, and your contribution to that. I think that's just perfect. That's exactly what it should be and how it should be. David Hume invited me to Ballycarry a couple of times to the Broad Island Gathering, the big Ulster Scots Festival in Ballycarry. And I have battered a lambeg drum myself, not terribly well because they're bloody heavy and bloody hard to play, but I have battered a lambeg drum. And, you know, even 20, 30 years ago, I'd have thought that, you know, if I heard the sound of a lambeg, I'd go, that's loyalist, that's political, that's threatening. And it's not like that anymore. It's not like that. And we need to sit, but we still need to sit down. There's a lot of work to be done to sit down and go understand each other and understand where we come from and understand why we do things and show respect to each other. I think the bottom line is just RESPECT, you know.
Well, it's very interesting you mentioned it, the Fla there, because the band I'm in, Churchill, they're 187 years old, and we were the first band to play in the Fla in 2013. It must have been now.
Yeah.
So, and we played what we always play, and it went down a storm basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and partly there was a novelty factor that they didn't know, you know, they probably hadn't, people who were organising the Fla hadn't had that quite type of music at the Fla before. But again, it's just personal relationships as well. It's knowing people and meeting people and you know, finding out, you know, David Hume, I do a history show with David Hume called The Long and the Short of It. You know, David Hume and I come from opposite sides of the political fence in Northern Ireland. And to be honest with you, you know, he's a mate of mine, but his politics of mine wouldn't be the same, shall we say. I disagree with him about virtually everything, but I regard him genuinely as a mate of mine, you know, and he is a proper mate, and we have good debates and we have good arguments and stuff. But I mean, I regard him as a friend, and I think that's, you know, that sort of stuff needs to happen more. It needs that we still have images of each other that are extremely negative, and then we need to break those images down.
So how did that partnership, you mentioned it there about David Hume, how did that really come about? And, we really enjoyed it when you played at the Fringe a few years ago now, and it went down really well in the Memorial Hall here in London.
Was that in the Apprentice Boys when we did the Siege of Derry, the Long and the Short of the Siege of Derry? Yeah, that was great crack, really enjoyed that. That came about because I was doing a documentary about Ulster Scots. And I knew very little about Ulster Scots. Again, it's kind of, you know, there's stereotype of, you know, Ulster Scots is just for Protestants and that's it. And we did a documentary, the Hole in the Wall gang did a documentary called Tim McGarry's Ulster Scots Journey. And basically the journey was me finding out what it was about and was there anything in it for the likes of me who came from a Catholic background. One of the first people we met was a great guy called Mark Thompson. I don't know if you know Mark Thompson. Brilliant guy, brilliant advocate for Ulster Scots and all that. Lovely guy. And Mark put me in touch with David Hume, who, as you know, is the mayor and the king of Ballycarry. Ballycarry, a wee village outside Carrickfergus, but a lovely wee spot and steeped in history. The first Presbyterian church in Ireland. The ruins of it are in Ballycarry, in the cemetery there. There's the monument to the great Ulster Scots poet James Orr, who was also a United Irishman in 1798. There are all sorts of gems in there. And I first met David Hume doing the documentary. I met him there in Ballycorn Cemetery, I think it's called. And David just hit it off immediately. And I said to him, look, is there anything in this Ulster Scots for the likes of me from the other side of the fence? He said, absolutely. You know, there's nothing sectarian about it. It's about our links between Scotland and Ulster and that go back centuries. And you know, it's probably, I think, again, like other things in our society, it's been politicized. Ulster Scots, bit like the Irish language has been politicized by people, you know, who don't necessarily have the best interest of the Irish language or Ulster Scots at heart. But Ulster Scots has been politicized. But I learned an awful lot. I genuinely didn't know as much about the connection between Ulster and Scotland as I do now. The long history of it over centuries and centuries. And we still have this one-dimensional view of history. There's good guys and bad guys, and if you come from a nationalist perspective, the plantation was the worst thing ever to happen to Ireland, and this came from nowhere. These Scots just arrived and stole our land, and it's a lot more complicated than that. I can see where that notion comes from, but it's a lot more complicated from that. And the notion of Irish people going to Scotland, Scottish people coming to Ireland was going for centuries, and it mostly affects the northern part of the island. Southern Ireland wasn't affected as much by the Scottish influence, but Northern Ireland certainly is, and the northern part of the island certainly is. And I found it absolutely fascinating. The people I met were great. I had a lovely chat with all sorts of people. I met Ulster Scots speakers. And you know me, I've been taking the piss out of the Ulster Scots speakers as well in the Ulster Scots language, but I met great people. And that's the thing, it's personal connections, it's meeting people, it's finding out people are not threatened, they're just nice, ordinary people trying to get on with their lives. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. It's like the Irish language. I don't really speak Irish. I don't like that, I didn't like Irish language at school. It's not necessarily for me, but for those who it is, let them get on with it, let them enjoy it, let them enjoy that pleasure. Same with the bands music. Not every Protestant is into music or into the bands or whatever. Not every, but we kind of pigeonhole people and we go, you're into the band, you must be this thing and that. And there's far more to it than that. And I think we just need to, as I say, show each other a bit of respect. And personal relationships are very, very important. And going out and meeting people, I'm in a privileged position because I do gigs and I get all over the place. And, I never discriminate about who the audience is. I'll tell the same jokes in the Apprentice Boys Hall in Derry as I will in, in a pub in the Falls Road. And I think that's important as well. And I get to meet a wider range of people. But that's exactly what it's about. I mean, what you did when you went to the FLA and stuff, it's brilliant outreach work and more party and more. I hope there's more of it.
Yeah, no, it's going on. There's been performances by bands in FLAs and Sligo and all afterwards, and one of the marching bands in the city of Hamilton went to Swinford a couple of years ago, and then there was some bands that's been performing in the Festival of Marching Bands in Limerick on St. Patrick's Day for years too. So it's good that this year sort of works continued.
Yeah. Well, I think, in terms of the loyalist bands, which are bands that are not necessarily loyalist, but they're connected with lodges and stuff like that, the image they have has been politicized because of, and again, it's like the extremist index, the GAA. The GAA is a huge organization, a fantastic cultural sporting organization, but it gets tarred with a brush because of some of the minor things they do with some of the things that I regard, people obviously don't regard them as minor, naming halls after famous Republicans and things like that. But the GAA is a massive organisation. I would encourage anybody any loyalist or unionist who has never been to a hurling match, go to a hurling match in Lochgield and Loy and experience what it's really like and what it's all about. And I think I would exactly encourage the same thing on the other side. I would encourage people to go and see what these bands are like, what the musicianship of them, the fact that they are very important in a lot of your loyalist working class areas in Belfast, but also with rural cohesion and all sorts of things. Like the bands bring people together. The musicianship is great. The crack is great. People are enjoying themselves. That's not. I don't think anybody in a loyalist band is necessarily out to batter me over the head and tell me that they're unionists forever. They're out to have a good time and enjoy themselves.
No, well, there's all different types too. There's over I think it's 660, but there's accordion, pipe, and then even in the flute, there's the concert flute and that you would see in an orchestra, and then there's a B flat flute and all too. So it's quite ranging, even whenever you say about bands, about the standards and all they have too, and the discipline and all too.
Yeah, well, absolutely. But if you go on Twitter and put in loyalist bands, the bile you'll get from. I was actually having a pint last night with my mate Gavin Hughes. I don't know if you know the historian Gavin Hughes.
I think I have met him before. Yeah.
Gavin was doing the commentary on the 12th on GB News, but Gavin had a wee article in the Telegraph there recently about and basically said something to the effect of the bands, you should go out and respect the loyalist bands. And there was a big backlash by some Republicans going, "How dare you? They're all support loyalist paramilitaries and they hate everybody and all that." And you go, "That's everybody wind your neck in, everybody calm down. This isn't what real life is like, And I accept that there are several aspects of sort of loyalist Protestant unionist culture that I find unpleasant, particularly around the 12th and the hanging effigies from bonfires and things like that. But that's mirrored on the other side. It doesn't justify either of them. If you condemn one, condemn the other. Condemn both. But that I think genuinely, when you think of things like the 12th from a Catholic nationalist perspective, I think it's becoming finally becoming sort of this is a bit of crack and let people get on with it and enjoy it, and it's non-threatening anymore. I don't think it's certainly there are political aspects to it, which most nationalists won't particularly like. The speeches from the field on the 12th are going to happen no matter what, and they're going to talk about the protocol and this, that, and the other. But I mean, the vast majority of it is just people enjoying themselves, enjoying their culture, enjoying their background, and it's family's day, a family day out. So good, fair play to you and good luck to you.
I don't know. I think too, especially here, and we're lucky that in the city we've had some of the most, especially the apprentice boys and all, taking the lead in the 90s and all. There's been some of the most successful parades in Northern Ireland probably every year.
Absolutely. No, and the apprentice boys did take the lead, and the people at Derry took the lead as well, and fair play to them, because that was quite a nasty period, if you remember, the whole parades, disputes all over Northern Ireland, and Derry led the way, and fair play to you. And as I said, I've been to the Apprentice Boys Centre a couple of times. I did a documentary about the long and the short of it, about the siege of Derry as well. Welcome was lovely. I got open arms. I've been there a couple of times. The crack's been great. And I think that's the way it should be.
The last time they wanted you to stay for a few pints as well, I believe.
I know. Sadly, I was driving back. I stupidly I had to drive David Hume back. I should have got him to drive because the crack was great. We talked about the siege of Derry and different perspectives of the siege of Derry, and our history is very important. But we take our history very seriously as well. And I think the trouble that I find with the history is that we see it as very black and white, and it very, very rarely is. I mean, David and I come at history from very different angles, and we have very different views on a lot of things. But we have found over the series that we've done that there are a lot of the things that we take for granted are not actually as clear cut as we like to think they are. You take something like even the Act of Union, which is very, very popular and very topical at the moment, the Act of Union of 1800. In fact, the Orange Order opposed the Act of Union of 1800 because they thought that Catholic emancipation was going to be off the back of it, and the Catholic Church supported the Act of Union, and most Catholics supported the Act of Union of 1800, which binds Britain to Ireland, because they thought the Catholic emancipation was going to be brought in. And that most unionists and nationalists wouldn't know that, because obviously the position now is all nationalists want rid of the Act of Union and all unionists want to keep it. But these things are far more complicated than we sometimes give them credit for.
You know your history anyway. Now I think it might have been maybe a David's influence on you, but
well, he has been very good, genuine. He's a proper historian. He's written books and all. I was just an amateur. I loved history at school and I have an A level in history, but David has written lots of great books. A great one about the Larne gun running, which we're hoping to do. We're getting a wee TV series actually of the 4-part TV series. And we're talking about things, funny enough, the siege of Derry. We're going to talk about Michael Collins. We're going to talk about the Act of Union, and we're going to talk about Larne gun running. Funny enough. So those topics which people will immediately have opinions on in Northern Ireland. They'll immediately think, well, I know about the Larne gun running. I'm in favour of the Larne gun running, or I was against the Larne gun running, and people will take strong positions. And I think we will speak to a number of historians. We'll get more of the details, we'll get more of the colour, we'll get more of the background, and we'll hopefully leave people thinking a bit more, and maybe hoping to do a bit more research and a bit more reading on the topics. But also, I don't want to patronise people and broaden people by saying I want to broaden their minds, but we do. I mean, I've learned a hell of a lot from doing the series with David, and hopefully the listeners and soon the viewers will as well.
This here podcast, we're going to call it something like All About Culture. So, Give My Headpiece and your comedies probably can be classed as that. So, how did that sort of come about? And did you see that as sort of a remedy to the dark days we were in too?
Well, I think it absolutely is culture. It's really it's a massive part of culture. TV and comedy, stand-up comedy, and which I do as well, is culture. Absolutely. I mean, culture is basically anything you do that you don't have to do. I think is somebody best described it. You don't have to go out and practice your music or be in a band. It's a living for us, but yes, it started for us when in the early 80s, when, as I say, Damon Quinn wrote plays, and we did stuff we did a lot of charity shows to try and raise money for good causes. And then we got bigger crowds, and we thought we'll solve the charities, we'll keep the money ourselves and see how this goes, So we specifically did try to talk about Northern Ireland politics, because it hadn't been done for a long time. right up until sort of the late 80s when ourselves and Patrick Keatley came along. There was nothing on TV. There was no theatres because all the theatres were blown up. No, most of them blown up. Most of the towns were deserted at night. There was very little live entertainment. And there would have been a lot of black humour about the troubles in pubs and bars if you went to them. But there was no formal way of talking about Northern Ireland politics, and nobody had done it for a long time. So when we came on the scene and we were determined to talk about, the political situation and the main players, but not just, that Ian Paisley had a loud voice, that we'd attack his politics and his attitude to things, and would attack the paramilitaries as well, and just say, like, what they're doing was wrong, and we would attack sectarianism. But we do that in a way that was funny. I mean, the first thing was, is this funny? Is this going to make people laugh? And if you can make people laugh, you can get away with an awful lot. You can say an awful lot if people are laughing, because people are disarmed. And when you're laughing, it's hard to be bitter and angry.
So how second are you now if everyone call it up to you in the street and call you dad everywhere?
I was at the Stiff Little Fingers concert there on last Saturday. I know I don't look like a punk, but I was a punk in my day in the sort of late 70s. I was a big fan of Stiff Little Fingers, and they had a big concert in the Custom House Square there with the Undertones. And yeah, there were about 5,000 people there, and I was in about 5,000 selfies, I think. And it was all, what about you? And I mean, it'll go on. I'm very, very grateful. I'm very lucky. We've had a fantastic career. We've been very, very lucky. If I'm known by one character, that's fine. It will, even if I discovered a cure for cancer and was the first Irishman on the moon, it's still stay in my head. It would still stay in my head from giving my head peace. And probably underneath it, where's Uncle Andy? Which is what everybody said.
Did you, whenever you started out especially on Give My Head Peace, did you expect that it's still running today? I know you stopped it for a few years, but it's still going as strong as ever.
No, it didn't. We had no idea how. I mean, it's been going technically 25 years next year. 25 years, yeah, bloody hell it is. And no, I mean the BBC, when they made it, said this is specifically for a Northern Ireland audience. This is not for Southern audience or an English audience or whatever. They'd never done a sitcom in Northern Ireland, a TV sitcom, but the pilot we did, 2 Ceasefires and a Wedding, went so well. We won a big award for it, and people really lapped it up, and they like that style of comedy, and they like that larger than life characters. And just the series started very well in 1998. I think it was 1998, and it just got bigger and bigger every series. So by the series 2 or 3, I mean, we were getting ridiculous 60-70% audience shares, and virtually everybody, and there were people who don't like it obviously and don't watch it, but it was getting ridiculous audience shares and massively popular. I was being chased around flipping supermarkets. I could hardly go out anywhere. We chased around supermarkets by kids looking for autographs. But we didn't think it would last. But the reason it has lasted is because we've adapted to the times and all of that. I mean, when it started, it was all about peace process and decommissioning and going into government and all that sort of stuff, and we have adapted and changed as we've gone along. We follow the politics, but the success of it, I think, is that the characters are larger than life, and they're a bit stupid and cartoony, but there's a grain of truth in all of them. There's Uncle Andys in loyalist communities, and there are Daz and Cals in Republican communities as well. People who say they're closer to Jerry than they really are, and all of that sort of stuff. And there are, and the character Billy the Peeler is. We specifically made Billy the Peeler a peeler who was certainly non-sectarian, but basically was a lazy sod, and basically just wanted to have an easy life and didn't care about stuff. And but all of those things we have stupid sort of the Simpsons type plots outlined, but you're able to get a little satire, and you're able to tell jokes about contemporary politics, and you're able to do it in a way where kids can be sitting watching the show and not necessarily get those jokes, but their mummies and daddies might as well. And I'm now getting to the stage, as I say, I was at the Stiff Little Fingers concert, and I get a lot of young people coming up and going, people in their 20s going, "Oh, you're my childhood. I remember watching you when I was 7 or 8," which is very depressing when you're my age, Stephen. People going. But it's very nice as well to know that you were a part of people's childhood, and it was, I mean, certainly we still get massive ratings now, but people aren't watching TV in the same way as they did in the old days, but we still get massive ratings now, and we do a stage tour every year of Give My Head Peace Live. We go out and tour. We're up in the Millennium there in Derry in March for 3 nights, and we love it, and it's just great, and we still sell out everywhere. It's great crack.
And your other famous role too now is the Blame Game. How did that sort of come about? And did you get any grief from the other regulars about all this sort of Ulster Scots stuff you were doing and all?
They did, you know, they tried to have a go at me, but I fought back. No, I did. You know what? I was very, very pleased. I'm a big Cliftonville fan. When the first Ulster Scots thing came out, I thought I was going to get a bit of grief because there was some publicity about it, and people go, "Oh, don't book all that Ulster Scots, that's all nonsense." And I was very pleased because I would go to Cliftonville matches, and there were people nudging me, going, "I did not know that. I did not know about that bit of our history. I didn't know we had such a big connection to Scotland. I didn't know about the Bruces and all of that. I didn't know about pre-plantation and the links between Scotland and Ulster and going back centuries and all of that. And because I did it again with a bit of humour as well. There were a few jokes thrown in as well, so it was non-threatening. It wasn't too heavy. It wasn't too serious. It was a bit of crack, but also I think it did open a few people's eyes, and I was really, really pleased with the reaction. It was a two-parter, and then I did a two-parter on the Ulster Scots language and the Scots language. And again, you know, I admit it myself, I would make a lot of jokes about the Ulster Scots language before I did this, and I have a bit more respect now than I say, because there was a proper Scots language that was, you know, lasted up until the certain centuries. You know, we saw one of the original Scots language books in the National Library in Edinburgh. Fantastic stuff, and there was a proper language there. There's something there, and when you tell people that, they go, oh, they get very upset and go, oh no, it's not a language, it's only a dialect and all of that. And you go, well, yeah, it's different from the Irish. Absolutely, it's different from that. I accept that, but there is something there, and there's something there to be valued and respected again and enjoyed. And if it's not for you, fine, don't worry about it. Don't let it impinge your life, but don't take it as, you know, an insult that somebody's, you know, enjoying Ulster Scots or learning Ulster Scots or speaking Ulster Scots. Just enjoy it. You know?
Yeah, I think too that even under you know, this new decade you approach it, even if it's not language, do you think that maybe Ulster Scots culture should get invested in?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it's as valuable as any other part of our culture, and if people want it, yeah, absolutely go for it. As I say, I've done a few gigs for the Ulster Scots. I did a few. I was at the Ballycarry Broad Island gathering a few years. In fact, I'm a chieftain of the Broad Island gathering, which I was very proud of. I was awarded a chieftain status. But it was one of those great events where, you know, and it was all about music and culture, and there were bands and there was marching as well, but the crack was just absolutely mighty. Very, very friendly, great atmosphere, you know, and something like that. And I think sadly that festival, the Broad Island Gathering, it's a small community festival, and it took a lot of work to get it off the ground, and I think it stopped, unfortunately, because of funding reasons, and, you know, it takes a lot of work. And I would like to see something like that coming back, and something like that, you know, spreading on into other places as well, because it was absolutely, I mean, the times I was there, I was welcomed with open arms, had great crack, had a great time. Maybe had a couple of pints too many in Miller's Bar in Ballycarry, which I would thoroughly recommend, by the way. But I mean, just family friendly, great day out, you know, and a great crack, and cultural events around it as well. So I did a night where there was, you know, there was poetry and there was singing and there was music and there was, you know, there was storytelling and stuff like that. And that's, you know, that's as it should be, you know.
So, well, I'll not thank you for your time, Tim. I'll not keep you much longer. So, as I said at the start, this sort of the theme this year is about be the change and about the future. So, where do you see the future, and especially about culture, and whatever way you think about culture, where do you see it in the future and this country going forward?
I hopefully see the change. I am an optimist, and I think this, if you turn off your Twitter, the world is a better place. And I think I see it in younger people. I think I see it in more into schools becoming not just formally integrated, but integrated in people meeting each other from the other side. And I think there's a guy called Richard Garland. I don't know if you know Richard. Richard's a unionist mate of mine that I met on Twitter. And Richard went up to see East Belfast GA Club having a hurling match up in Mollusk. And I went with him, and he was just going out because he'd never seen any GA before, and he wanted to see what it was about, what the club was about. And, you know, it was welcomed with open arms, you know, and that's exactly as it should be. And I think far more nationalist Catholics should, you know, be invited to things like band events and stuff like that, but you go and see them for what they really are, which is part of culture and heritage and part of our communities. And, you know, they're, as you say, there are all sorts of community benefits as well. But the hope is basically that we learn to respect each other, and that sometimes involves both both communities taking down the bits that they know are going to be offensive to the other side, because we know that does happen. You know, I can't see myself going to an 11th night bonfire where there's an effigy of Michelle O'Neill hanging from it, and you know, I don't see myself going to the Wolf Tones where people are going to be singing "Ooh Ah Up the Ra." I can see why that would offend people. But those are the minority aspect of, you take the Fela and Fobble, there's far more to Fela and Fobble than that Wolf Tones concert, far more. Brilliant community event as well. There's far more to the 12th and to the ceremonies around the 12th than just a few nasty bonfires and a few horrible things said on bonfire. I mean, we need to get beyond that, and we need to go, right, tell you what, I think what's happening now as well is more and more people are regarding the 12th and things like it as family friendly, an event that either, if it's not for them, they don't go. But why not go into town and see it? You know, why not enjoy it? You know.
Thank you to Tim McGarry for taking time out of his schedule to take part in this podcast. There will be another podcast this Friday at 7:30 across all of our social media channels.